Good. Okay. Hello, Maria. My name is Liam, and for my finals analysis project, I chose to do the topic of genetic choices, and I chose to do a poster board presentation. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the four aspects from the chapter that really stuck out to me: genes and genomes, gene therapy, stem cells, and case study two. And along with this, I'm going to answer the comprehension questions you provided, along with analyzing the topics from the viewpoints of Kantian ethics and utilitarianism. So let's get started. The first topic I chose was genes and genomes. This is definitely the simplest of the four I picked. Within genetic choices, DNA is the chemical code for all living organisms. It's grouped into 46 chromosomes, and mutations within the genome can lead to many various diseases. There's over 4,000 genetic disorders, and these genetic disorders can result from many different complex interactions between mutations, lifestyle, environmental factors, and all of these things just kind of just show like how intertwined your genetics and your health are. The next topic I want to talk about is gene therapy, or manipulating genetic material to prevent or treat diseases by altering the function of cells. Some of the techniques from gene therapy include adding, correcting, silencing, reprogramming, or eliminating cells, which often involves using modified viruses to deliver genetic material. It holds promise for certain conditions such as hemophilia, cancer, and different genetic disorders. And gene therapy can target somatic cells, affecting only the treated cell or germline cells with inheritable changes. And while somatic cell therapy shows some promise, germline therapy raises ethical concerns about designer babies and genetic errors. So, despite these technological challenges and risks, advancements continue with safe and effective therapies anticipated in the near future. The next thing I want to talk about within genetic choices are stem cells. So stem cells are derived from the inner cells of 5-day-old blastocyte, the early stages of an embryo, and they are pluripotent, meaning they can differentiate into any specialized cell type in the human body. And unlike adult stem cells, which have limited regenerative capabilities, embryonic stem cells can replicate indefinitely, and they really just have like infinite therapeutic potential. So researchers want to use these stem cells to help regenerate tissues and treat diseases such as diabetes, Parkinson's, heart disease, and spinal cord injuries by creating those specific cell types. And while the current therapies using stem cells are limited to blood and skin transplants, the potential within this field, it just continues to drive interest in it and why the testing continues to be done today. The last aspect from the chapter I want to talk about was a case study, just to put an example in. And the case study I chose was case study two. Case study two revolves around an ethical controversy surrounding the selection of embryos with disabilities. A U.S. lesbian couple chose a deaf sperm donor to ensure their child was deaf. And similarly, there was a survey that revealed that some parents use certain clinics that provide the service of having embryos that will develop into deaf children. And so the case kind of talked about these two things, and it raised some major questions, such as, is it ethical to intentionally limit a child's abilities, potentially constraining their opportunities? And should authorities restrict the clinics to selecting only healthy embryos? And it just talks about the implications of choosing a disabled embryo when there is a chance that you could just have a baby and it wouldn't be disabled, obviously. Um, and lastly, at the end of the comprehension questions, we'll talk about the viewpoints of Kantian ethics and utilitarianism, uh, and how they influence the perspectives of genetic testing. So I chose genetic choices because I thought it was the most interesting subject that was presented to me in class. Within me having type 1 diabetes, learning just kind of about like my diagnosis and where it comes from within my genome, and how there are different, like multiple different methods that are being like tested probably daily to find a cure is super interesting. And honestly, before this course, I did not really know much about like what they were doing to find a cure in diabetes. Obviously, there's lots of charities and stuff that are working to help people with juvenile diabetes. But like getting to learn about stem cells, not gene therapy, sorry, and like see like what they're doing in order to help kind of cure diabetes was interesting, and it really opened my eyes that we might be way closer to a cure than I thought, which could be great for not just me, but for like kids in the future as well. And honestly, that was definitely the most interesting thing I learned about, but the most challenging for me was definitely the case study, because I never thought that people would go out of their way to choose their kid to be born with a disability. So like analyzing the ethics behind that was definitely a challenge for me because I was just trying to wrap my head around why someone would make that decision. And it was the first time I ever thought about that, so it was interesting for me to kind of read about that and just see like what was going on there. So within utilitarianism and Kantian ethics, uh, and their viewpoints of genetic choices, utilitarianism evaluates actions based on their consequences, and it kind of aims to maximize overall happiness. So within gene choices and therapies, it supports gene editing and stem cell research if they can prevent diseases and improve quality of life. And this, however, just kind of like raises some questions about like the risks from this, just as like unintended consequences, like people having access to this due to social inequalities, and then just, the ethical implications of creating these sort of designer babies that are perfect. And from a different point of view, Kantian ethics, which focuses on duty, human dignity, and universal moral principles, regardless of the outcome, supports genetic interventions only if they respect individuals as ends in themselves, not as means to an ends. So, as an example, creating or destroying an embryo for research might kind of violate the principle of treating life with respect if you're using it just for research. And additionally, gene editing might be unethical under Kantian ethics if it overrides with the future generations' autonomy without their consent, because obviously they can't make that decision. So, how has this course kind of impacted me as an ethical being? In terms of ethic, I think this has definitely opened my eyes, definitely within our class discussions. Uh, as the youngest person in the room, I feel like I've learned a lot and picked up a lot from the people around me. And I definitely say that I've developed more of a view of Kantian ethics, wanting to treat everyone with respect. Uh, and I think that's definitely developed throughout the class, like just listening to everyone talk, especially within our agree disagree in the middle. I feel like I'm in the middle for a lot of those. um, and I think before the class, I definitely would have been like utilitarianism, like just do the greater good, like forget all the consequences to your actions and things like that. Um, but now I think I have a more of a respect for others because I've seen so many different viewpoints. And within an ethics location statement, I think I would write it now with much more respect for others and treating people as not a means to an end, but as an end themselves. Versus before. Before the class, I don't even think I would have used that phrasing. So I think my viewpoint has changed quite a lot. And some questions that I wish to further ask about this topic. I came up with a couple. So, at what point does a genetic intervention cross the line from therapy to sort of enhancement? And is it even ethically relevant if it's a therapy versus an enhancement? And should public funding be used to supporting technologies such as gene therapy or reproductive gene screening? And my last question is, how might these genetic technologies impact social norms regarding disability and diversity? Like, how do we treat disabled people if or when these things become normalized in our society? And I think that's everything. So I enjoyed working on this project, and I feel like I learned a lot. And I had a great semester. And I hope you have a great break. Thank you.